All right, 14 minutes gone past the hour of 5. You're still listening to Hard Facts on 92.3 Nigeria Info. I am Kala Dakorubatibo. Good afternoon to you. It's time for us to slightly switch conversations. And I said slightly because we will still find a way to connect our conversation during this hour to what is happening in River State. We want to talk about the valedictory statement of the retired Justice Dattijo Mohammed, who made a couple of statements in that valedictory session where he talked about the power of the CJN, where he said too much power is in the hands of the CJN. And he talked about how the Supreme Court is operating below par. He talked about the number of justices that we have at the Supreme Court. They are currently 10. There is a deficit of 11, and we've mentioned that on the show before. He also talked about the constitution of the justices that sat on the appeal, the presidential appeal, and he said that certain regions were not represented. And that's the reason why I've called my guest on the show, because I'm thinking if the Supreme Court, which is the apex court, the finality when it comes to legal issues, when it comes to legal arguments, when it also comes to the hope of the common man, is not operating at the optimal level, then there is a problem. And of course, as you know, while the ranking justice, second in command at the time, coming up to make such statements is something that we should not sweep under the carpet, and we should take a look at. And he mentioned how powerful the CJN is, and I'm wondering, is that also how powerful the Chief Justice of a state is? And so we're going to be looking at it, especially now that there is the conversation around the impeachment of the governor of River State, given that the Chief Justice would play a major role in the impeachment process if it actually, gets to that point. All right, so I've got Professor Ritchard Nwokocha, is Professor of Law, River State University, and is with me via the phone. Good afternoon, Prof. Welcome on the show.
Good afternoon, Kalada, and good evening, Nigerians.
All right. You already know what we're talking about. Justice Dattijo Mohammed came out over the weekend, or was it on Friday, and said the things that he said. And summary of that is that the Supreme Court is operating below par. What's your take on that? As a professor of law, as someone who is in that field, how are you taking the news? Can you hear me now? Hello, Prof. Oh, my.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes. Yeah, okay, better. I said, as a professor of law, someone who is in that field, how are you taking the statements of the retired justice?
Well, I think it's taken in good faith, and I think it restates what some of us have said in the past. It's not. I need to make this clarification that he was not attacking the present Chief Justice of Nigeria.
Okay.
Neither was he attacking specifically the constitution of the court at the moment. He is pointing out the obvious: the role of the Chief Justice of Nigeria in a number of judicial-related matters or legal professional matters raises concern that much discretion should not be exercised by one man.
Okay.
In a sensitive sector of that nature, and that's what he was talking about. So it's not after Chief Justice Ariwola. No, the office of the Chief Justice of Nigeria wields quite a lot of powers, as he has said. Powers granted that office by law. And if one man has to do all of that, then that man is extremely powerful as the Nigerian president.
Okay, so now the Chief Justice of Nigeria is chairing the NJC. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is also
yes, you're right.
sharing the Legal Institute. Is that what it's called? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
now.
National Judiciary Institute.
Okay, that there's two other legal bodies that he's in charge
He's
of.
also the chairman of the Legal Practitioners Privileges Committee, which is the committee that approves appointment of senior advocates of Nigeria, elevation of practitioners to the rank of senior advocate.
Okay. And so the NJC is in charge of, looking at who should be a judge. Correct me if I'm wrong as well.
Who should be a judge? Who should remain a judge if there is a complaint against the person, whether or not he is fit to continue as a judge. So it determines who should become a judge. It determines complaints against judges. And it determines whether a person should be removed from being a judge.
Okay. Now let's look at it from this angle. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, such a very, high title, I should say, a very important title. You also look at who is becoming a judge, such a important process as well. And it's in the fate of one man, as argued by the retired justice. If the CJN then is appointed by the president, can it not be argued that the judiciary is somehow in the hands of the president, the pocket of the president?
There is no doubt that the Constitution meant well in trying to structure those institutions the way it has done. But the obvious truth, excuse me, and what our experience shows as a country, it's apparently what you have just said. Wherever there is a controlling chief executive, anything can happen, and he can control everything through every other institution that is under his control. So if a controlling chief executive, for instance, appoints a subservient person to the lofty office of Chief Justice of Nigeria, what it means is that the person will do the president's bidding. Because subservient people are not independent. What they do is ask Oga, what do you want me to do? Or Oga, what this man should do? And they will do it. And that's where the risk lies. And as you know, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So whether it is for wearing it as judiciary or his Oga that appoints him where he is a subservient appointee, there is danger for the nation.
Okay, so let's get to corruption. He says the Supreme Court has some level of corruption therein. He mentioned the former CJN, Onoge, and how the process went, how he was swept under the carpet and he was given, a slap on the wrist. He also mentioned how, Tanko was removed when he began to ask for certain things. He did set it to demand for certain things. Corruption. He said Chief Registrar gets to earn more than justices of the Supreme Court. What's your take on this? What's your take, quickly, before we go for our first commercial break?
The gentleman who spoke is an insider.
All right.
And a retiring judge who has served for 47 years as a judge and served out the last how long of the decade as a justice for the Supreme Court of Nigeria. So he is speaking from experience. And those of us who are speaking from outside will only be guessworking. But the man was stating the obvious. So there is no disputing the fact of what he said. It is what it is, what he said.
Okay, so you're saying that certain justices are corrupt. There's the possibility that they are corrupt because of the financial situation of some of these justices.
Well, without specifically accusing anybody, if let's just work with the fact that was in the public domain. If a judge was being investigated for violation of the breach of violation or breach of the code of conduct in a manner that presents things that are unexplained, and he resigns in the process, it is suggestive of the fact that he is avoiding the outcome. That is even more where the inquiry has been concluded by the NJC and the report is about to go to the president and then he resigns. It suggests that he's resigning in advance to avoid the outcome of the result. actually getting officially announced. So
Okay.
take it at that level, it will mean there is something wrong. There were things found wrong by the NJC before CJN Onogen resigned.
All right. Okay.
If you go to
We'll go for a quick commercial
last
break.
one.
I would have to pause you now. We'll go for a quick commercial break. The commercial break I mentioned not too long ago. When I come back, I would ask you some more questions. Please still stay tuned. For you're listening to Hard Facts. Time check, 29 minutes to the top of the hour. And I am Kala Dakuru Batsubo. I've got a guest in this over the phone. I'm sorry to say, I wanted to say in the studio. I've got a guest over the phone. And we're looking at the Supreme Court based on the valedictory session statement of the retiring Justice Dattijo Muhammad. And my guest is Professor of Law at the River State University. I'm talking about Barrister Ritchard Nwokocha. Thank you for staying tuned, Barrister. Welcome on the show.
Thank you, Colorado.
All right. So we were talking about corruption before we went on that break. So quickly, can you continue from where you stopped? You were saying.
Yes, I said without specifically accusing anybody by way of opinion, we can walk by what is in the public domain. Former CJ Onogen resigned when NJC concluded an investigation on him and was about to forward the report to the president. His resignation got to the president the day before the recommendation of NJC was to get here, which from information found wrongdoings and recommended punitive action or disciplinary actions. And so we conclude that it threw in the towel just before the report got to the president to avoid what was recommended in that report. That is implied by anybody who follows the process will come to that conclusion. Now, the last DJN had a lot of wrongdoings that were leveled against him by retiring justices of the Supreme Court. It even got to the point where the justices of the Supreme Court had to jointly write to him and all that, and later became public and all of that. A lot of wrongdoing. Now, he also threw in the towel, but the gentleman who spoke is right, because no subsequent actions took place to address the wrongdoings that were found or that were alleged by those whose action caused him to resign, to retire voluntarily. So, you can't say that there is anything wrong with the observation.
So how do you think this will affect how Nigerians view certain judgments that have come out from the Supreme Court? And I'm asking because if we are now beginning, or we are now seeing this in public view. I mean, it's no longer in private now. It's now been brought to the public view. Does it not mean that Nigerians will begin to question us, that judgment and the other judgment and the other judgment? So, what's your take on that?
The judiciary is and has always been the most sensitive arm of government. Rascality can be played at the other levels, but the judiciary is the one place that we expect that there should be no room for imagining things. Unfortunately, we cannot say with confidence that reputation has been maintained in the last 1 decade or thereabout. Our courts, especially at that very high level, have had a few judgments that even non-lawyers will wonder how those decisions came about. And each time this happens, and when this kind of statement comes, it lends credence to the impression that the citizens have developed that there was something wrong with how judgments were reached. We do not have control over the minds of men, but we can reduce how we make the impressions we give men by the way we act.
All right.
So if you have had questionable judgments, and there have been, and then you have this kind of allegations coming in from within the court, it will definitely lead those who had that impression to a conclusion that, as they say, I said it, there was something about it. That is definitely the outcome that is going to have on the minds of such.
Now, let's look at the presidential election now. You know, we just finished with the appeal not too long ago. Last week, you and I talked about it. How do you think this will, what kind of impression do you think this will create on the minds of Nigerians, given that the statement from Dattijo is coming days after the Supreme Court judgment?
There is corruption. Well, he specifically made reference to the last two CJNs where there were issues that were not addressed. So I think that area of corruption in administration of the court should not, a reasonable man should not link that.
But he did say, but sorry, Prof. He did say that the deficit in the number of justices, is also a factor, given that the justices are appointed according to geographic, geopolitical zones.
You had not raised that, and we have.
Okay, all right. But let's talk about it.
If you are referring to that, definitely that will lead some minds to be colored.
Okay.
But look at the composition of that panel. I noticed that there was no judge from the two. Well, there were three contenders.
Yeah.
I think there was no justice from Adamawa State, but regionally there was no judge from the regions of the president and Mr. Peter Obi, the distinguished Mr. Peter Obi, who was contestant in one of the parties. So the two were not there. But again, if we are to be minded by that, that can leave a mind colored. Definitely, it can leave a mind colored. The reason to leave a mind colored is that the impression will be created that a plot can be hashed that would have been difficult to hash if there is a member in that panel that comes from the region of the person against whom it is suspected that a plot was hashed.
Okay.
But the courts do not quite function that way. Each justice writes his judgment, and then the majority opinion of the justices constitutes the final decision of that court.
All right.
So, assuming even that there was a member from any particular region, they will have one judgment out of 7.
Okay. Now, Prof, is it the same situation that plays out at the state level when it comes to the power of the Chief Justice? Is it the same? Is the Chief Justice of the state?
There are differences.
Okay.
There is no NJC at the state.
Okay.
NJC is a national body, which is the one that determines who is qualified to be a judge, which recommended person is qualified to be the Chief Justice that they will now recommend for appointment, and which will handle discipline in the judiciary and all such. So that is not applicable to the Chief Judge of the state. So,
sorry, let me ask a question. Who determines who becomes a judge at the state level, at the state magistrate? The NJC.
It's the NJC.
Okay.
It's the National Judiciary. Yes, it's the National Judicial Council. So what happens at the state level is that you have the State Judicial Service Commission, just like you have the Federal Judicial Service Commission, which suggests names to the Chief Executive, who will now recommend those names for appointment, that's nominate those names for appointment to the NJC. NJC will now recommend, after screening the names, NJC will now recommend one of them for appointment as a CJN, which will now be subject to, in the case of the state, subject to approval of the House of Assembly, and in the case of the national government, subject to approval of Senate. So
now the reason
powers do not exist.
Okay, the reason why I've asked this question, this question is because now the drama playing in River State, I think the CJN, or rather the Chief Justice of the state, I keep saying CJN, forgive me, has been...
The Chief Judge of River State.
Yes.
The Chief Judge of the state.
Yeah, he has been caught in the storm, in the drama. Now, not confirmed yet, but there are rumors, because he would definitely play a role if the impeachment process, would happen.
Yes. The impeachment process under Section 88 of the Constitution provides for the Speaker of the House, upon the House agreeing to investigate, it provides for the Speaker of the House to call on the Chief Judge of the state to set up a 7-man committee which will investigate the accused governor. And then the finding of that committee will determine whether he's going or not. According to the Constitution, if the committee finds him not guilty of the misconduct, then the proceeding ends there. But if the committee finds him guilty, then the House within 7 days will adopt a resolution. If 2/3 of them approve that finding, the governor goes. So the Chief Judge is a player, a major player in the process.
So the question I wanted...
reason,
okay. You were going to say?
If the Chief Judge, for any reason, is considered to be partisan between the players, in the crisis, it will become a deficit to the party that he is not supporting. So the Chief Judge is expected to be neutral, as the Constitution requires that position to be, so that it can sit as an arbiter or appoint honest Nigerians who are not card-carrying members of parties and who are not civil servants or persons serving in public service to independently and impartially investigate the allegations.
Now let's bring it to River State. Let's bring it to River State now. If the Chief Judge is appointed, like you've explained, by the governor after selection by the state NJC or the State Judicial Commission, I correct myself there. If that is the case, don't you think, like we asked at the national level, don't you think that the CJ would play to the tune of who appointed him?
Definitely, it will have a controller in government, because the idea of the Constitution is to provide variegated opportunity for people to get quality service by bringing in different people to act at different levels of public service in those institutions. But if you have a control freak as chief executive, then definitely he will be what the person can bring to the state. So definitely, if you have a control, permit me to use that expression, control freak, as chief executive, everything will be under control. Even membership of the House of Assembly, qualifications to be nominated by the party under his control will be subject to his control, and he will have to approve everybody who will have to get the ticket to run in the House of Assembly. Because control will be impossible if you don't control your own supervisors. So that is definitely what to play out as a concern. So
let's paint a picture like we usually do when we talk legal matters, you and I. So let's paint a picture that the Chief Judge in River State is not on the side of the governor, as this impeachment process, goes on. Let's say, we're doing probabilities now. Do you then argue that the impeachment process would go on as smoothly, and then would the governor be able to challenge such a situation? Remember, the process has been outlined by the Constitution, as you have mentioned, and it gets to the CJ and it constitutes a 7-member committee, and then they come up with an investigation finding or something like that, and then they pass it back to the House of Assembly. Can the governor argue that the whole process was partisan?
Impeachment process is one of the processes that is not non-justiciable. Where it is carried out in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution, no court can question it. The only grounds on which courts have questioned the impeachment process, and a lot of them have been struck down in Nigeria, is on the grounds that the constitutional provisions were not followed. For instance, fair quorum was not formed, or the number of people who approved the recommendation was not the number required by the Constitution. It's only on those grounds where the procedure was not followed religiously by the House. It's only on those grounds that the courts strike down whatever has been done. So yes, you can challenge it, but that is only if any part of the procedure was not complied with. In that case, the court will pronounce that those who carried out the action or who are attempting to carry out the action have not met the constitutional requirement. Take, for instance, the law requires that 1/3 of members of the House should write the complaint that will be acted upon. So if those who sign the petition or the complaint for removal are less than 1/3, that will be a ground to approach the court, and the court will agree with you. But if they meet the requirement, you cannot act at that stage. You have to wait until wherever they fail to comply with the law before you can act.
So what does it take to form a quorum? What does it take? Is it...
For purposes of impeachment, the Constitution says in Section 188 that applies to the state, to governments of the state. Constitution says 1/3 of members of the House have to sign the petition or the motion calling for removal. 1/3 is required to sign it.
Okay.
And then where that is done, and be successfully submitted to the Speaker, the Speaker must within 14 days, within 7 days, transmit that petition to the or the motion. The allegations against the person of the governor must be transmitted to the governor or deputy governor, whichever is your officer who is sought to be impeached. And then within 14 days, the House must meet and resolve without debate whether or not to investigate the allegation.
All right.
If they agree to investigate the allegation, then the Speaker must write to the CJ, who has to constitute that panel of independent Nigerians who are not government workers and who are not politicians, carrying members of any party. And then that body has 3 months within which it must complete its work to investigate, hear the governor, those who accuse him, and what his defense or his own defense. He can speak by himself, he can speak through a lawyer that he chooses by himself to represent him at that proceeding. All of that must be done and must be finished within 3 months, after which the outcome will not be considered by the House. So if the finding was negative, the impeachment proceeding ends here. If their finding was positive, the impeachment proceeding proceeds with 2/3 of the House having to approve that finding.
All right.
And then the man will stand removed.
Okay. Now, one final question. Time is fast spent, and I don't know how to do it. But one final question. So you've mentioned the Speaker of the House playing a very important role in all of this impeachment process. I know we're supposed to be talking about the Supreme Court, but somehow we found ourselves in Rivers State. We have a situation where reports are coming from 2 quarters. And it looks like we have factions now when it comes to who's the Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Who usually can call for plenary? Is it the one with the maize, or how does it work? Can you quickly explain for us, please?
It is the person who was elected Speaker is the person who can call for the sitting of the House, unless he has been removed in a sitting of the House, which must be a sitting of the House, properly so called. But in this country, we have seen all manner of things. I want to emphasize, we have seen all manner of things. We have seen 5 people sit and purportedly impeach leadership of the House of Assembly in this state. And it was recognized by persons who swore by the Constitution. Those persons were recognized as the people who were acting for the state, even if it did not conform with the law and what the law stated. So we've seen all manner of things, and they can run with anything and create any effect according to who has control over the instruments of coercion, who controls the police and all that. They can do all manner of things, and they have done all manner of things in this country, both at the national level and at the state level. That is the fear and that is the worry. But it is whomever was validly elected by the House as Speaker that can convene the House.
Okay. All right, then. Remember, you that is listening, we brought you the story that, in one situation, we had about 23 members, a call for the suspension of 4 members of the House of Assembly. And, another report we had Edison Eye, who is amongst the people suspended by the, Order 23, saying he had 26 members elect him as Speaker of the House. Now, the first situation, I know my colleague earlier said that we could not gain entrance. He as the Rivers State House of Assembly correspondent could not gain entrance, but we had another correspondent who was able to gain entrance into the House of Assembly at the time and was able to give us, verified information as to what was happening. I'm really sorry. I should apologize that I did not take enough calls, in our 2-hour conversation, but the open season will be there. So you know what? I'm just going to take 1 or 2 calls. 0817-923-0002 and 0817-923-0003. On Facebook, we're live. Tamino Itekena Dagogo says, personally, I don't have much problem with the level of power as passed to the office of the CJN, but do people But do the people keep nominating? Oh, I don't get it. But do the people we keep nominating to hold it by their character and antecedents deserve to hold that office? I get you now. He said, what I believe should be our concern is the character and antecedent of the individuals nominated to the Supreme Court, amongst whom the CJN is usually chosen during confirmation hearings. What do our legislators ask them? What facts do they dig up and present to the public? What does the kind of research dedicated to the President Tinubu on a CJN nominee? When we focus more on satisfying federal character principle and religious balance, competence and morality are the main sacrificial lambs. Ideally, if a morally upright, disciplined and humble person is in that office, the person would function and use the powers in a way that it is meant for. I've got Onyeka and he's calling from Aba. Onyeka, welcome. What is on your mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. Is that Canada?
Yes, Canada it is. Welcome. Let's get to hear your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you, my brother. I've been listening while Professor Nwokocha and you are discussing on the latest issue about what happened at the judiciary. The Chief Justice, what he said.
Yeah.
Can I go on?
Yeah, quickly, please. We don't have enough time. Quickly.
Okay, but I wonder, two of you cannot mention this. The man was specific. He said North Central and
Southeast.
What do you call it? Southeast.
Well,
are not represented.
Okay.
Instead of you people to call it, okay, Professor Nwokocha, being a lawyer, is he not aware that Southeast is not represented?
But we mentioned it. We mentioned it. I don't know. Is it because we did not call the name Southeast? He said both Obi and Atiku's geopolitical zones were not represented. Is that not what we said?
The retired chief judge was specific. He mentioned Southeast and North Central.
All right then.
Brother, teach your brother to mention this, as he said. Just,
all right, thank you. Noted.
Know.
Noted. Onyeka, thank you very much for your time. Your what do you call it now? Your concern has been noted, or your contribution noted. Professor Nwokocha, your final word. We've got to leave the studio now.
Just to clarify, to Onyeka, and then to just round up. I don't think I saw any judge from the regions of the three contestants whose appeals were before the court.
Okay, all right then.
All three. So as a final word, I would like to appeal to everybody to play by the rules. Let's follow the Constitution, and as much as possible, let's remember the reason we are voted into government in the first place: the welfare and well-being of the people, and not the ego of ourselves and those who profess to be our leaders or masters. Let's focus on the well-being of the people and do that which is best in the interest of Rivers State.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. To you listening, I will dedicate the whole of the open season to you, and I'll get your thought. I do apologize once again, but I needed to squeeze as much information from my guest today, and that's why it took a lot of the time. But thank you once again for being a part of the show. After the major news at 6, we would continue talking for development.